Hello, everyone, and welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at people's experiences with the paranormal, or cryptids, or other supernatural entities. Be sure to like and subscribe to support the channel.
Around 2011 to 2012, I was in college as a freshman and I lived in this room on the basement floor. I always had one of those eerie feelings like I was being watched in that room. The dreams I had were probably the most vivid and crazy I've ever had in my entire life. It wasn't until my girlfriend started sleeping with me in that room did things start getting weird. One night she wakes me up hysterically crying, telling me something is here, there's something in the room with us. Now, I've never been super religious, she was, or anything, but I've always thought that spirits and ghosts could possibly exist. So I get up, walk around the room, and don't see or feel anything that was off. We eventually go back to sleep and everything seems normal. The following week she sleeps in my room again and I wake up at like 3 a.m. and to my horror I look and there is this dark, cloudy, humanoid looking apparition standing right next to my bed looking down on us. I go to reach out to it and it's like it disappears into nothing. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I had no doubt in my mind that what I saw was real. So now I'm like, whoa, if I ever tell my girl what I saw, she'd never set foot in my room ever again. I've only ever told a handful of people about it because it's something I can't really explain, and who'd believe me after all? The first person I did tell believed me though. It was my resident advisor. She then informed me that a girl killed herself in my room years ago. My now husband and I rented a tiny house together about 4 years ago. At first everything was fine, but suddenly one day things got weird. My husband and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. My husband went upstairs to grab something, and as he was walking up the stairs his phone, which he had left on the coffee table, flew into the air, did a couple of flips and landed on the floor. To say I was freaked out was an understatement. I spent a lot of time alone in that house as my husband worked during the day and I worked evenings. Every day something else happened. Guitar strings strumming in the night, pictures falling off walls, strange noises, things going missing. I once left my phone on the bed to go downstairs. When I came back up, my phone was nowhere to be seen. I searched everywhere. It turned up inside the duvet cover, which was fastened. I've forgotten a lot of it, but it was bad. We got a cat and it stopped the day we brought her home. My mum works in an old mansion which is extremely haunted. I've experienced scary stuff there and my mum basically lives in fear. They've tried blessing the house, but it made things worse. They're hiring an exorcist because things have got so bad. I don't envy her, it's literally like a scary movie. It was around 2015, I think. I like to fish small ponds, the harder to get to the better, that means nobody else has been fishing them. So me and my brother-in-law are about 20 minutes ride off the power lines to a small pond probably about half the size of a football field. We have a great time, but it's getting dark and we are on four-wheelers. We keep fishing till it's pitch black. It's a heavily wooded area. There's also a broken down house, looks like it's been abandoned for hundreds of years, off in the distance probably about 100 yards from the pond. We decide it's time to go. We don't have flashlights or anything. We get all our equipment back to our wheelers, have everything loaded up, and then we hear a laugh. I'm talking a creepy clown laugh in the middle of the woods with nobody else in sight. Scared the shit out of me, I crank the four-wheeler with the pull cord, it snaps. He then has to get behind me on his wheeler and push me off. We totally broke the crap out of the rear end of my four-wheeler. We were in such a hurry to get out of there. I can still hear that laugh, but it made no sense. We don't have bears, cougars, mountain lions. It almost sounded like a hyena laugh, and I damn sure don't have any hyenas around here. We get back, both have no idea what the noise was and never went back. May. Not gonna pretend I physically saw a spirit or something. However, I do have an interesting event that happened to me, as well as a mildly interesting story to go with it. I lived in a rural town in Indiana. Not a gigantic population, kinda a place where people seem to know everyone and who is a relation of who and who lives where and has lived where. My parents bought the home for a steal back in 1992 when I was less than 1. Now this house was, not ancient, but it was older and worn down. You know the type? Creaky floorboards in some places and the stairs, a poorly insulated and protected crawl space where random critters would get in, a strong wind would seem to make the house groan. It's easy in a home like this to see and hear and imagine stuff. And some of these things very likely were just that. Like how my dishwasher running at night for some reason sounded like a cowboy with spurs walking across my kitchen. Or how the moonlight dancing along my wall through the trees made it seem like ghosts flittering about. But there were other more specific things, that both parents, my sister, and I all experienced. Like the time my sister swore she saw ghosts dancing in our kitchen, she still insists that it happened till this day. Like 20 years later. The time my mom said the cat hopped on her lap and she swears it said the world hello to her. My dad, who says he had a 3-minute conversation with me while he was pooping, only to realize that I was spending the night at my cousin's house. My personal most defining story was from when I was 17. Growing up with all of the noises, I was terrified of sleeping. My room was also the very first accessibly bedroom, no matter what entrance you came in, which was definitely a factor in my fear. So at around 11, I'd convinced my parents to put a lock on my door so I'd feel safe, and every night I would mostly close my blinds, mostly close my curtains, lock my door, and go to sleep. Now one night I woke up. And I sat upright in bed. And I was like, okay, well, I'm awake, like wide awake. Why is that? Do I have to pee? Nope. Thirsty? Not really. Check the clock, 3 a.m, nope, not ready to be this awake. And that glance back away from the clock on my left, I noticed a glimmer of light move. My head snaps right to my door. There's nothing there. Darkness, shadows, and a door. A door with a ray of some moonlight shining towards it on the handle. And I swear, from 3 to 4 feet away in the dark, it looked like the damn handle was turning. I sat there and was like, Jesus, maybe I'm sleeping. Nope, I'm awake. It's a trick of the light. It's not really moving. And so I keep staring at it. And my doorknob, which is locked and doesn't turn except from the inside, is rotating. Very, very, very slowly towards me. My fight or flight went from 0 to 200, I leapt from my bed, grabbed my Louisville Slugger leaning against the nightstand, and reached to the handle with a grace, speed, and elegance that I'll never match again. My hand closes on the knob. I'm 3000% certain at this point that the knob is turning, FYI. I fling open the door, and just noting this. I know that's not the most satisfying conclusion. But it's all the truth. I know in my soul that I saw and felt this knob turning when it shouldn't have been. Now there were of course all the smaller things that would happen as well, and it was all enough for us to be a little spooked sometimes, and was definitely a topic of conversation. One thing that I didn't learn growing up though, and didn't find out until more recently, was that my dad had experienced more than he'd really told us. Apparently enough that he, sometime when I was younger still, once we'd been at the house for several years, started kinda putting feelers out to the community to find out more about this house. He found out some interesting things. Like the original owner who had killed himself via hanging in the basement. Or how the 2 previous owners, both still living in the community, both left the house because they got tired of being spooked out. But he found out about something more interesting. A rumor. Through his investigation he heard a story about a hotel that was supposed to have been somewhere near where our house was. The rumor was that this hotel had had a fire at night while the guests were sleeping, and that multiple people had lost their lives there. And this was of course a story. He couldn't find record of the event anywhere. Had spent hours upon looking through all records and copies from newspapers from our area for the last 120 years. Nothing. Nothing that referenced a hotel built anywhere near us, nothing about a fire, nothing about any deaths. And he dismissed it. Didn't think about it again. At least he didn't until several years after that. About the time I was 15 or 16. Parents decided that they wanted a garage. Family friend was involved in construction and contracting, and we got him to plan and build for us. They cleared out space in front of the house, started leveling out the space, and digging down to pour the foundation. And that's where things got super interesting. Because they started digging, and there was already foundation there. Giant mammoths of stones about 30 feet long. Just from the area of the garage, a standard 3-car size, they pulled about 10 of these guys up. Had to get special machinery and to drag them with chains. We asked our contractor buddy. And he was flummoxed. They consulted some other knowledgeable builders in the area. And they all came to the same conclusion. These stones had to have been the foundation for a multi-level structure. Now we of course can't slap a 100% sticker on this. But I don't have any doubts that there was a hotel right my house at that had burned down at the turn of the 19th century. We sold the house 10 years back. It ended up just being my mom there and she had to get out, but I think about it from time to time, and of course when I drove my wife by the old place to show here where I grew up, I had to go out to the edge of the woods and have a seat on one of those large stones. They're still there, BTW. Giant stone remnants of a fire that claimed the lives of multiple people, that history seems to know nothing about. Not what you're asking for, but this is a story that happened to me that still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Maybe 6 to 7 years ago I was enrolled in a university located in the middle of nowhere. The students outnumbered the townsfolk 10 to 1. If you drove 20 minutes away from campus in any direction, it's just farmland and woodland. Me and my group of fellow degenerates went on burn cruises where we would just drive for hours seeing how lost we could get. We would go hours without seeing another car, another human, any sign of civilization other than the roads. On the first day back from spring break, we head out like we normally do. It was beautiful day, no clouds, 70 degrees-ish. We take these series of roads, and after driving through a heavily wooded area on a dirt path, we find this vast open field with hills. It looked like a Microsoft background. It's about 1 to 2 miles till the road takes us back into the woods, so we pull over so we can enjoy the beauty of the sun. One of us has the idea they want to go frolicking. Sounded like fun, so we did. We run to the top of this hill, and when we get to the top we all freeze. There at the top we see some kind of large canopy surrounded by hills. So obviously we run down to check it out. It's about the size of a football field with a dome canopy that's been ripped up and obviously very old. Underneath the canopy was a giant man-made hole. About 40 feet deep, rectangular in shape, again length of a football field. Concrete walls going all the way down. Some wires hanging from the walls. It's hard to tell, but at the bottom it was mostly empty except for what looked like some kind of old, 1960 to 70s maybe? Computing technology. It was definitely not functional. It looked as if it was thrown down there long ago. And a plastic table, set up and looking perfectly normal, obviously wasn't thrown down there. There were a few other small things we couldn't make out what they were, but also looked damaged and trashed. And that's it. Me and my friends spent the rest of the year trying to figure out what it was. Our theories ranged from an observatory to secret government testing site. We tried to find it again but never did. So many unanswered questions. Why was it there? Out in the middle of nowhere. What was its purpose? How did people get down there? No ladders or stairs. Why is the only road a dirt path about half a mile from the site? No area for parking, no road leading up to the actual site, just a giant mostly empty concrete hole with a tattered cloth canopy and a dome shape over it. I've been atheist all my life, and was entirely on the paranormal believers are dumb boat. At least I was like this up until the last few years, where I started to realize that I have been seeing things. It started after a shift at my small-time high school job. I was tired. I slung myself into my bicycle to ride home. I cycled around the corner to come up real close to a shadowy figure brandishing some sort of weapon. I panicked and immediately turned around and pedaled in the other direction. But when I looked over my shoulder, they were gone. Spooked, I assumed I was just tired. To date, this is still the most vivid I have seen them. I see them semi-infrequently now, mostly somewhere dark, usually when I'm tired, always when I'm alone. They are usually humanoid in shape, a dark blue, and if you try to focus on them they fade out off sight. Most of them seem to wander around aimlessly and don't pay mind to me. Some will look or follow a little, but not really try to mess with me. The exception to this is the other most prominent instance. The shadow I saw in my dreams. It was unlike most others and felt like an instinctual ball of danger, a large toothy mouth and several clawed appendages that didn't have starts or ends. It sat in a corner seething. I knew it would hurt me if I got too close, so I avoided it. But I found myself laxing and walked too close to the sun. At which point it lurched at me, sinking its maw into my neck. I woke up to the same figure sitting over me. It lunged again, now in the waking world, causing me to scream and blink, waking up my confused partner and causing me to be unsettled for the rest of the night. I'm still very skeptical of even myself to this day. I refer to it as monkey brain, the leftover anxieties of our evolutionary ancestors. Likely nothing more than minor hallucinations brought on by an overstressed or overactive mind. But even now I wouldn't be surprised if someone definitely proved they existed. And I'd rather not fuck around and find out. Maybe I'll tell the backstory story another time, because this post would be way too long to write if I told any sort of backstory. Anyway, to set up the scene, me and two friends, let's say J and D, were at a friend's house to let their two dogs, Pippin and Mary, because say our friends were out of the house for the day. Their house was up on a wooded hill that bordered a national forest. Their backyard was just woods for miles. Pippin was this older dog that minded his own business. He went outside, then we let him back in. Mary, on the other hand, was just a kid and was super crazy. Yeah, Mary ended up running off into the woods. So D waited at the house while me and Jay went to look for the dog. We looked for a good place to get to the back of the house and we found a trail, so we followed it. It was the afternoon but quickly got dark because of the tree cover. It started raining, so we decided we'd call it in about 30 minutes. We kept walking the path and we heard footsteps. We thought it was the dog, so we called out, "Mary. Come here, boy." About 40 feet ahead of us we saw this bipedal gray figure. Cross the path from right to left down into the creek on the left of us. It passed behind a tree and didn't saw anything after that. It almost sounded like it was talking. But like broken speech. We thought maybe Sasquatch? Or the Wendigo? And we never went back to the area after that. If you're wondering what happened to the dog, about an hour later the friends returned, Called out to the dog and the dog returned immediately. I hate that dog to this day. Stupid mutt. There have been a few, but the craziest would have to be during a road trip about 15 years ago. My girlfriend and I were returning to Florida from Ohio, and somewhere in Virginia on 77S we decided to get a room. Found an exit and was floored by how cheap the rooms were at all the hotels off that exit. Ended up at a Hilton for around $30 and couldn't have been happier about the money we saved, right? We get into the room and I go to take a shower to wash off the road, and almost as soon as I turn the water on there's this insane pounding on the door. Startled me and I got a little angry about it, so I open the door and ask what the fuck her problem is, only to have her look confused as shit, across the room, in bed and under the covers. Just as puzzled as her, I go back to the shower and it happens again. At this point I'm positive she's messing with me, so I ignore it, finish my shower, and she follows suit. About a minute after she's in the bathroom she comes out with a sad, fucked up look on her face and asks me why I would even say anything like that to anyone. No idea what she's talking about, and a little irritated already I snapped back at her and she closes the door. We're both just done for the day and get in bed. A few minutes go by and we hear the shower curtain ruffle, which didn't bother us until the light flickered like someone walking by a lamp, and then we hear the light switch click as the room went dark. Absolutely creeped out, I asked her if she heard and saw what I saw, and we noped the fuck out of that place. We were only there for about 2 hours and didn't even bother getting our money back or anything else. A short time after we hit the road I started feeling sick. So bad I had to pull off the road and spent a few minutes with the worst diarrhea and vomiting I'd ever experienced, and then I was fine. Like nothing happened. I have no explanation for what her and I experienced that night, but just thinking about it still makes my hair stand up. I have a handful of odd things that have happened. I'll start with the one I find the hardest to discredit to myself. I had a friend in high school, when I was around 13, and I would sleep at her house every chance I got. It was basically my second home. She told her house was haunted and I sort of laughed it off cause I was like, yeah, okay, people love to twist things into being paranormal. I later found out that her and her sisters love to play the Ouija board. Don't trust those anymore, but the more I stayed the more things started to happen. She had 2 doors in her room, other than the balcony, a door to the toilet and a door to the bathroom, and both doors would randomly slam and slowly creak open in the middle of the night. At first I thought like it has to be her sisters, but the doors were only a meter from the bed, and when I check, multiple times, I never found anyone, plus they'd have to be hiding there for literal hours. I think I even checked their rooms once because I just wanted so badly to believe it was them. My friend was never very bothered by it. She would put on scary movies and sleep like a baby in that room right after. I eventually happened while we were awake too, and by then I full-heartedly believed her that the house was haunted. One time in bed I even felt something touch my upper thigh, firmly enough and for long enough that I knew I wasn't imagining it. So moving on to the second story. When I was about 8, my father lived across the road from a graveyard. Now I don't know if this plays into what happened to me, or if it could have just made me uneasy enough to somehow hallucinate it, but basically I remember hearing the distant laughs of my father and his girlfriend. They were in bed and the only people in the house. My bedroom was the closest to the front door and far enough away that they couldn't really hear me easily. So when I heard footsteps on the wooden floor, coming towards the front door by the way, in the hallway, I was terrified. It was loud enough that I was sure they were really there, even as I tried to convince myself out of it. I started to see a shadow appear, very slowly walking towards my room. I had not gone to sleep yet, so this wasn't like a sleep paralysis attack. I've remembered this memory so many times, and I think because I was so scared I kind of dissociated while it was happening, to the best of my ability, that I can't remember exactly what happened. The shape of the shadow I don't remember anymore. I think it was a long black humanoid shadow. I threw the blankets over my head, hyperventilated, and tried to ignore it. I heard the footsteps stop and then they trailed away back up the hallway. I couldn't tell my dad. I was scared to make any noise or leave my bed. I honestly can't guarantee it wasn't a person sneaking in from the back, which is more scary in a way. But it was really scary knowing that I could be in what should be a safe environment, with people laughing, and knowing I was in potential danger. So, final story. This is the least interesting and the most easy to discredit, but it was very special to me, and if you ask me to tell you about my paranormal experiences, this is the one that comes to mind first. It wasn't scary, but I was scared because I was about 5. I was sleeping and felt cold going over my body, then I felt the presence of something. When I opened my eyes there was a light blue orb, but it was more like a semi-transparent cloud. It left particles of itself that faded into nothing as it went from my chest to my feet, then it also faded into nothing. I personally think it left when I realized it was scaring me. It probably lasted a minute or two. It was really comforting and I'm really grateful for that experience. It's easy to say that because I woke up to it that maybe it was a sleep paralysis attack and I was scared enough that I couldn't move for a minute or so, but I honestly felt a connection to whoever or whatever this was and have never had anything like it happen again. I used to laugh about my ex-girlfriend watching YouTube vids about people going in strange places and trying to communicate with ghosts. All my high school friends have known my feet on the ground personality. I was always very skeptic of those things and would always make fun of people who believed that. So to prove her wrong, as I was absolutely certain nothing of that sort existed, I proposed that we try an Ouija board. We didn't have any, so we made it up with yes no I don't know sign made of paper, and using a turned over shot glass we started. For the first 10 minutes nothing happened. We were trying and there was a lot of noise outside since I had left my window half open. So I decided that it was probably more likely to work if there was no sound. I closed the window and instantly I felt that the air had changed. It's hard to explain, but something was different. I went back on the table where the paper cards and the shot glasses laid and we started asking again. The glass started moving instantly. I could not believe what was happening. I was thrown into a state of panic and shock. So we asked questions and he answered. He was not always happy and would move the glass so far away we could barely keep our finger on it. The pressure that was applied on the shot was intense. It nearly fell off the table multiple times. We had to ask him to please put it back in the center because we could not keep up. It continued for about 10 minutes or so before we asked him to stop and he agreed. Also in the same apartment one night I was having difficulties sleeping and felt a presence. The next morning my girlfriend woke up extremely anxious because she dreamed she was in that exact apartment and a ghost was trying to hurt her badly. The last thing was I dreamt of a friend, more of acquaintance because I barely knew him and hadn't seen him in months, and his entire family had eating in a church. It was very dark and the mood was heavy. Something bad had happened and I remember drinking with his uncle. I had never met any member of his family. I was very disturbed by the dream because I hadn't seen him in months. The dream gave me chills and I couldn't understand why or how can I imagine his entire family in such a dire mood, so I wrote the dream down. Couples of weeks later I saw him and told him that dream, and approximately, with a window of a day close, when I had it. He froze and told me that at that time he was having a funeral, and had a big meal with his entire family because his grandma had passed away. Just a note, he has no social media so did not post anything. I had not news and could not have known in any way that it happened. Scary stuff. I am no longer a skeptic in unexplainable phenomenons.